Welcome back to another episode of the Recovery Edge podcast. My name is Alfredo and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm joined by my co host and wife, Kayla.
Hello, everyone.
And we are also joined by Laura C., who I met at the Happy Trudgers group in Denver. Laura, how's it going?
Good, thanks. How are you guys?
Good,
Good.
good. It's neat to have you on here. I've only been in a handful of meetings with you, and we both know Mike, and he's been on this show before. He's been a great friend of mine, and he has I think like a year. He got sober a year earlier than I did, so I think that's how we know each other, through the Happy Trudgers group.
Right. Yeah, Mike's great. He's very solid. He's always there and he just really cares, Like if I'm having a bad day, he can tell. And
Yeah,
I know he's going through a lot himself, but he's made it a point to help others.
yeah, he is a
Just
wonderful
that about
man.
him. Hmm.
So I think we'll get started with, you can tell us your sober date, and then you can tell us what it was like and what happened, like what brought you here and what it's like today. What do you feel about that?
Sure,
Yeah.
I'll give it a shot.
Are you going
Um,
to give us any legal advice?
I am not, being
Oh,
that I'm not
okay.
a lawyer.
But we joke
That's
about
kind
that in the room a lot. Like, people are always asking you for legal advice.
Yeah, right. Well, I know a lot of lawyers. A lot of my family and I
Hmm.
are legal staff, and so we've got lawyers in every field, but none of us are actually lawyers.
Well,
So,
you hit the right meeting, because back in its heyday, it was filled with lawyers, I swear.
right.
Right.
Yeah,
It was
I know.
crazy.
I love Happy Treasures because it's so diverse like that.
Yeah. So, when's your sober date?
My sober date is May 31st, 2022. I'm approaching 16 months right now.
16 months, huh? Almost.
Huh?
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
What brought you to the rooms? What was it like? Maybe how you
Well,
found your first drink or whatever. The floor is
yeah, I
yours and
guess.
this is your story, so I'll let you have it, all right?
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I had a pretty good childhood. I still have two parents that were wonderful. My dad was a firefighter and my mom worked for the phone company. Um, they're very righteous people, and I have an older brother who's also I consider very righteous. I kind of resented him for that. He always overshadowed me, and I was kind of the black sheep, the rebellious one. And he was always, 4.0, which I did too, but I still got in trouble. But I always did have that feeling that a lot of alcoholics talk about, that I didn't fit in anywhere, that I was awkward, I was very paranoid. Um, I I made friends with people who had no other friends because I was compassionate, and my mom loved that about me as a child. But I wasn't really cool until about middle school. I made a lot of new friends and became pretty popular, I guess, and that's where the drinking started. I was about 13. I think I had like snuck sips of beer here and there before. Um, my parents drank, and they still do, uh, like frequently, but I've never seen them drunk. So I don't think that they're alcoholics. They both had alcoholic parents, but they were always in control. They could have a few and then stop. They never did anything they regretted, never got in trouble with the law. Um, so I kind of thought that drinking was a rite of passage, something you got to do when you became an adult, and it was an okay thing, something you should do because my parents were good role models, but they drank. Um, but I kind of remember my first real drunk, and we were 13, and a bunch of us had like snuck out, and we were out in this field and had a handle of cheap vodka. And they, like on a dare, had told me to take like 10 chugs in a row, like hold it up and swallow 10 times. And I remember I did it, and I had never even tasted vodka before that. And so it was kind of like that hurry up and get it over with, when you have cheap liquor as a kid and that's all you can afford. It was like, let's just get this over with as fast as I can and get as much as I can. And that continued. Um, and, I got completely hammered that night. I think I collapsed after I did my chug of 10 swallows of vodka. And then we all had a blast, and I had arrived. I felt really cool. I I didn't feel like an outcast anymore. People thought I was ballsy and brazen, and I was edgy all of a sudden, and I didn't care. I wasn't paranoid and awkward anymore. Um, and then I drank a lot after that, every chance I could, which is, not that much when you're 13, but I found myself sneaking, if I was at a friend's house, sneaking their parents' drinks, even without my friend's knowledge. And that was kind of weird. That was like a sign too. When I was like 13, my friend had fallen asleep at a sleepover, and I wanted more. Like we had been sneaking her parents' alcohol, and I wanted more, even though she was asleep and I was by myself. Like I was drinking alone at 13.
Hmm.
That's kind of crazy, right?
Hmm. In someone else's home.
Right. Yeah. And risking getting them in trouble and everything. And I filled the bottle back up with juice, like instinctively. I didn't even have to be taught that trick. Um, so um, I guess, people talked about drinking like a lady or keeping your composure. I never wanted to be a lady. I wanted to be one of the guys. Like I thought it was cool that I could drink gross beer and drink the guys under the table, and that continued. I guess I started getting into drugs at 14. I think that's when I started smoking weed, and that was all fun. And I tried ecstasy a few times at 14 as well, but I didn't really care for that. Um, and just kept on partying and partying. And while I had these really good parents, back then we didn't, there was a couple of us that had cell phones maybe, and you would just say you were going to sleep at somebody else's house, and we would be God knows where, in really dangerous situations from that age because we had all lied about where we were and we had nowhere to go. Uh,
So then, how did
and
it? Oh, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
I was wondering how this kind of morphed as you got older into high school.
Um, I was I was still getting good grades. I was a cheerleader and was still doing pretty well, but I kind of noticed that I was taking it a little farther than a lot of my other friends who were partying. Um, and then the drugs came. I think I was probably 15 when I did cocaine. And I mean, I still kind of consider cocaine just a party drug. Like I never did it daily. I never wanted to do it in the morning, or it wasn't a lifestyle for me. It was just like one of those party drugs, but I did it and a ton of it at 15. And you know and I think it was probably around 16 I quit cheerleading. I started ditching class a lot to smoke weed or go drink or do something, and my grades started to slip. I started packing on some pounds, and um, I just kind of started a downhill spiral as far as other people could see. And it was when I was 17, like right around when I turned 17, and I had been dabbling in all of the drugs, that a friend of mine asked me if I wanted to try speed with her. And I was like, why not? Try everything once. And so we did, and it was disgusting. Some gross older guy's apartment, and I tried it and loved it. And then we did it a lot, like every day we were smoking. And I had told my friend that I would never do meth or heroin, though. Those are the two things I would never do. And she was like, hate to tell you this, but speed is meth. And I was like, well, shit. I was already hooked. And I was losing those god awful pounds that were making me unpopular again. So it was too late by then, and I was really hooked on meth by my senior year of high school. I still managed to graduate, and I got into CU Boulder's engineering school. I was good at science and math, and that's what my brother did. And I thought that's what I should just do because I was constantly trying to keep up with him, even though he never touched a drug in his life. Um, so that's kind of how high school ended, addicted to meth. And then I went off to CU Boulder to live in the dorms. I roomed with my cousin who was not into drugs at all. She had a high school sweetheart who she's married to this day. And I stopped doing the meth for a while because like I couldn't get it up there. But I would still drink and do other drugs that were available at CU Boulder, but not a lot of meth heads attending that college, unfortunately. So I kind of that kind of like fell out of the picture until I started to, gain some weight again. And I go, oh, I know what to do. It's only a 30-minute drive to Denver. Picked up the meth again. And grades started to fall. And when I was 18, it was like April of my freshman year at college. My cousin, my roommate, was pregnant. Um, and she was just throwing up all the time and didn't want to do anything. And I was, I never fit in with any of those college girls. It was like, all the kids at CU were from out of state, really, really rich kids, and we were just, normal middle class people. And I never did fit in. I wasn't good at making new friends, so I would be driving home to Denver to see my old friends and to buy meth and stuff. And one of my best friends in April got killed in a drunk driving accident. And I completely just lost it. I couldn't go to class anymore. I had to get fucked up all the time on everything just to escape that. Um, oh, and I also got caught drinking in the dorms. I never completed any of my probation or anything. So I was asked to leave CU Boulder and came back home. Um, Living with my parents and stuff and continued to do meth every day. And I would hold a job for a little bit, just crappy jobs. And I don't know how they didn't know for several years that that's what I was up to. Um, but that continued until my 20th birthday. I kind of hit a rock bottom with all of that. And I confessed to them what I had been doing to my parents, and they got me set up with like a therapist and kind of took care of me while I detoxed from that. And kind of that, I never looked back when it came to meth. And I just wanted to be a normal person because the meth lifestyle is so yucky and you have to do such horrible things and hang out with disgusting people. And I was living a double life with the meth. I would maintain composure and look put together, and I would hang out. I'd have like a group of friends that I would go drink with or go to the clubs and stuff, but they had no idea that I was secretly smoking meth. And so it it's just a lot of humiliation being exposed of your double life and then getting back to normal. I guess that's where I was getting at. I wanted to be a normal person. And by the time I turned 21, I got a job in a dive like neighborhood bar, bartending. And I kind of thought that normal people just got drunk all the time, I guess, and that, hey, at least I'm not doing meth um, anymore. And at this bar, I mean, it was encouraged that you take a shot at the beginning of your shift and then when the customers buy you one and stuff. And so I did end up going back to school at Metro State while I was working there, but I was drinking a ton and I took some really easy courses to where I could get straight A's with no effort at all and still get drunk every day. Um, yeah, do you have any questions yet?
Sure. So you were pretty good at math and science, and
hmm
you have all this, the our favorite word, potential, you know, and
hmm
somehow you kept all of this hidden from your parents, through the like your early 20s or something like that. Um
Yeah,
you eventually, like, what I'm thinking is that they couldn't fathom that you were addicted to meth. Like, that would never cross their
right,
mind, right?
right. Yeah, I had just lied and lied and lied all the time. And, I got caught red-handed a few times drinking and stuff. But yeah, I'm sure nobody still, to this day, nobody believes me unless you knew me at that time. Uh, but that's what I was up to.
Wow. Okay. And so you're in
Uh,
college, you're doing Metro, but you're still drinking every day. What
mhm.
happens next in your chapter?
Um, well, I guess the next kind of big thing was while I was working at that bar and going to school, I got a DUI. And it was kind of a dumb story how it happened. I had worked the day shift at the bar and done shots with my coworker all day long. And then I went to the grocery store. I was playing house with this guy that also worked at the bar and stopped back by the bar on my way back to his house, which was on the way because, well, I think I wanted one more shot. And also, there was this older Korean veteran that was always there, and he lived in our neighborhood, and I would give him a ride home because he always needed a ride home. So I stopped there. I think I had another drink with the groceries all in the car, then went and dropped the guy off. And I was coming down the switchback road in the mountains and like a dirt road, and this cop shined a spotlight on me, said he was looking for a doorbell ditcher and he thought it was me. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And then he could tell I was drunk. I failed the roadside sobriety tests and I blew a .21, which was pretty high for considering I was grocery shopping and people considered me sober enough to drive. Um, so after that, I got my license taken away, which made it really difficult to go to college and work and everything. And we're kind of in the mountains where there was no RTD. And yeah, that was just a horrible hit to my ego, having to constantly need a ride. Um, but the things that I did to evade the probation and continue to drink despite being, not allowed to legally, it was insane. I was not going to quit drinking. And this was back before they had the UAs that could test for alcohol. You would just have to get random breathalyzers when they would call your color. And so I would have, and then I ended up eventually with the interlock breathalyzer device in my car. And I would keep these handheld breathalyzers on me because I would have class in the morning or something, and I would wake up, blow into the thing, and I'd be still blowing hot. And then, oh, great. I'd have to scramble to find a ride or call a taxi. And uh, sometimes I would blow hot into the car, and then I constantly had it like all organized how many of those that I could get before it was reported to the DMV, or how many of my random BAs that I would just miss altogether because I could not blow zero all day long. And so you could like get away with skipping a couple of those before your PO would get on your case about it and stuff. And so it's insane the lengths that I went to keep drinking because, in my mind, the whole DUI was not my fault. It was that stupid Korean vet that needed a ride home. It was that stupid doorbell ditcher. Yeah, this whole thing was just unjust and not my fault, and nobody's going to tell me to stop drinking, you know? Uh, and so I just, I don't know. Looking back, it's just that should have been a really big red flag.
I
And
I do relate with blaming everything else in the situation, and
yeah,
not looking at ourselves.
right. It was never my fault. I was always in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or like I said the other day, like I would accuse people or say that I'd gotten roofied on nights where I got way too drunk. It was like, how did I black out? I must have been roofied. I mean, clearly I did nothing wrong.
So you get your DUI
So,
and you're dealing with your consequences, but this still isn't enough
mhm.
to get you sober, right?
Oh God, no, no. I was still in my early 20s at that point, and there was no end in sight. Um, And so I eventually got fired from that bar for being too drunk on the job, which is a very amazing feat considering everybody there is drunk all the time on the job. And I got a job at this crappy little bar that had just opened. Um, and it kind of sucked because I didn't know anybody and I couldn't drink there because I had that interlock in my car. And so I would actually have to like stay sober on my shift, and I hated it. But that ended up being where I met my husband. And so I'm very glad that it all happened, like it was meant to be. Um, but I don't know where to go from there.
So how did you explain to your were you kind of like embarrassed to tell him, "Oh my God, I have to drive with this thing?"
Oh, yeah. Well, he would come in with all his coworkers because it was near his work, on Fridays for happy hour, and they would always ask me if I would stick around and have a drink with them. And I told them, no, I can't. I have an interlock and I got to go to school in the morning or something. And yeah, and it turned out they had like a Halloween party at this bar, and it was in the basement of a motel. And for the Halloween party, I decided I was actually gonna have a good time and get drunk at my bar. So I got a motel so that I wouldn't have to drive home. And woke up and I knew Josh had come to the room that night and stuff, but I didn't really remember what had happened. But yeah, I had called my friend. I was like, I had another one night stand. Oh my God, this sucks. And then now we're married. But
So
yeah, that was the story. Yeah, he was Tommy Chong and I was Mia Wallace from Pulp Fiction.
Oh my God, so cute. I love her.
so you're just charming the pants off of him, or I mean, I don't mean that literally. What I mean is, every he thinks everything is hunky dory, everything's okay, right?
Uh,
And you guys get married,
he
or what?
ignored a lot of red flags because he saw me like we would we were dating and stuff, and I would wake up and have to blow into my thing and see if I could drive my car or not, and he would have to give me a ride if I couldn't, and he still dated me. I still have no idea why, but
Is he an alcoholic too, or he doesn't see? He literally just couldn't see red flags. I mean, I used to not be able to see red
I,
flags myself, but
yeah, he's not an alcoholic at all. He's wonderful and he's been so supportive. He hasn't had a drink since I decided to quit. So
oh, God bless those people.
I know it's so weird. He could just be like, I'm not going to drink again, and then just do it like
Tell
nothing.
tell him to get a chip anyways. Like, just come and show off, man.
Yeah.
That's great. So how did the marriage start to go then? How long have you guys been married?
Oh, 9 years.
Okay. Tell us about
So,
that. Related to
yeah,
your
so,
alcoholism and addiction, of course.
right. Um, I've finally graduated from Metro and got a job at a law office. And so that was quite a shock, but it was a good thing for me that I wasn't in bars all the time because I knew that wasn't healthy. And I knew at that point I was going to die if I didn't get out of the bars. Um, and we moved in together pretty quickly, and everything was going great. Our family loved him, and we were together a couple years before we got engaged and then got married when we were about 28. And all this time there would be he liked to go out too. All his friends are big drinkers. A lot of them are alcoholics, but he's not. And we would just party and have fun, and sometimes I would cause a scene or get too drunk, but I think that my tolerance was high enough because I was drinking frequently enough that it didn't get out of control too often. Um, and I guess after we were married for a while, for a couple of years. And he had told me I told him about my past with drugs and stuff, and he told me he wouldn't tolerate that, if I ever got back into drugs. He didn't say which one.
Hmm.
Uh,
So you found a loophole.
so, I guess, yeah. And cocaine just, started showing up again, and I kind of I used it just to try and not be so drunk. I would never have done cocaine at that stage in my life without already being drunk and having my inhibitions, gone. Um, but, and then like randomly, my friend had it at a New Year's party, and then I found out like a cousin of mine was doing it and stuff, and so I found ways of getting cocaine, and I was doing it behind his back. Not too often, but it was still something that was very dishonest, you know. And
How long did that go on for?
um, well, there was about 3 years between when we got married and I got pregnant with our oldest child. So that went on. And yeah, I mean, after we were married, it started getting kind of ugly. It would be, partying all night, and then I would be like, "Oh, let's go to brunch and stuff." And he knows what that means. I'm gonna go get drunk again on Sunday and probably call into work on Monday. And he didn't want to do that because he's not an alcoholic, and apparently those people don't like drinking in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is also strange to me. But so he would get really annoyed with me and I would find somebody else to go get brunch with, or just, and I started to really have the guilt at that point. I don't think prior to that I ever really had much guilt about my drinking. I thought it was something normal to do in your 20s, and but I would just start feeling guilty. What Even if I didn't black out, even if I did remember everything that had happened, I just kind of feel like a piece of shit, not be able to explain why. And I did see a therapist briefly, thinking that he could help me to moderate my drinking, but I wasn't willing to quit. And as we all know now, that was probably the only option. There was no such thing as moderation. So I kind of gave up on that idea, and we did want to have kids eventually. So after turning 30, we kind of started trying, and I did get pregnant with my oldest, and I did quit drinking then. And so
Was
that
it a
was the
struggle
first.
to quit drinking for pregnancy, or were you able to be like, well, sometimes we can't do something for ourselves, but we can do it for our children?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, no, that was not a struggle, no. Um, I did have that occasional like glass of red wine that they say is okay, which it was just stupid. because none of us just want one drink.
Right.
And so it was like, what, this is just, it's risky because actually doctors recommend you don't drink anything at all, and it's not getting me drunk. Why am I doing this? Um, and so, yeah, I did abstain for that pregnancy, and we had our baby, and everything was going really well with him. And I once I weaned him, which was when he was a year old, I was able to drink as much as I wanted again. And that went downhill really fast. The drugs came back, they showed up, and yeah, I just started to feel so guilty. And we wanted another kid, and it happened very quickly that I became pregnant after that. Um, and I guess I'm getting kind of close to the present. Is there anything else I should touch on?
At this point, it's really what moment is it that got you into the rooms?
Okay.
Your
Yeah, I
bottom.
should. Okay. So yeah, so then when my oldest was one, we got pregnant with our second, and they were born less than 2 years apart. And this is, yeah, I guess pretty much the turning point for me. So, I always thought that I would party in my 20s, get it out of my system, and then become a mom. And then I wasn't going to be one of those drunk moms. Like, I'm better than that. Um, I would I would be too busy after I had kids to be drinking like that. And it just wouldn't happen anymore. I thought I'd snap out of it. And I kind of did, for those brief periods of time. And oh, look, I abstained for 9 whole months. um, but I had my youngest in March of 2020, and that was a really dark time. Beginning of COVID, everything was on lockdown when we came home with him. And I got really depressed. I definitely had postpartum depression on top of the COVID and everything. And he was a really fussy baby. And I just, looking back, like a lot of the postpartum depression was also just alcoholic thinking. It was like, why is this happening to me? Why is my baby so fussy? He's not sleeping. I had hired a therapist to teach me how to get my babies to sleep. This is bullshit. This is all happening to me. Everything, was about me. I was so self-centered. I wasn't compassionate towards this baby who was not feeling well and crying. I was mad at him for ruining my life. And I have so much guilt about that to this day. Um, but so, and then, for the first year of his life, we were still pretty much on lockdown. We have our parents who are they're about 70 years old that were babysitting for us while we worked. And so we had to protect them from COVID. We couldn't be going out to bars or partying, not that we would, but so we were really isolated. And we did start drinking again. My wonderful husband did quit drinking for both of my pregnancies as well, just in solidarity or whatever. I didn't make him. He
That's
just did it.
amazing support system. Wow.
I know, he's wonderful. He asked me if you wanted him to be part of this. I was like, I don't know, maybe down the road.
Exactly. That would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we would drink like a couple of beers, but I was still breastfeeding and I was able to kind of moderate. And then once in a while, we'd have friends over and I'd drink too much. But I I was working from home 100% of the time, and like if I was hungover, nobody would know. You look like shit all the time, anyways, when you have a newborn baby. Like, like I didn't have to show up to the office, and so, but I was still kind of keeping it under control until I weaned him and got my freedom back yet again. And things were opening back up, and it just took a turn for the worse again. Um, it wasn't long until I was blacking out. I would pick a fight with my husband just to get out of the house because he didn't want to party like the way I wanted to party. And, take an Uber somewhere, which he hated because I always pass out in Ubers. He's had to pull me out of them before, like if they were lucky enough to find my house, and he would just worry, just like my mom did. I would be gone and MIA and not answer the phone, and I just can't believe now that I did that to them. Um, yes, and then I started to do cocaine again, or I would try to find Adderall. Um, Here and there, I would think it would. I wanted to drink more. I never wanted the party to end. And I got to the point where it was like every time I would drink, I would black out. And so I needed something to maintain. And I around that time, I had one moment where, like, it was my birthday. I had gone to a concert at Red Rocks and I completely blacked out there. Apparently had to be kind of like carried out of there and stuff. And I woke up in the morning and it's my birthday and I'm gonna day drink and got all drunk that day and got in a big fight with my dad and couldn't take care of my kids because my husband had to work. And um, that was that was a big turning point where I realized I needed to quit drinking. Um, I talked to my doctor about it and he recommended AA and I was like, nope. Um, I was raised an atheist and it always had been an atheist, and I was not willing to do anything involving, well, what I thought was religious at that point. And so I've read a lot of books. They call them like quit lit, people who claim to have alternatives to AA to help you quit drinking. Um, and and I would try, and then I would just say, oh, come Friday, I'd be like, screw it, I can have a few drinks. Or I would like try to practice moderation and stuff, but it never worked. And I just kept getting in trouble and, worrying my husband and getting blackout drunk. And I went back to the doctor and tried something really dumb called the Sinclair method, which I do not recommend. And I'm surprised that I've never met anyone else in AA that had heard of it. But it's where you get naltrexone, which is for people who are like heroin addicts. What is it? An opioid antagonist. And but it also is supposed to block the receptors in your brain from the dopamine that comes through when you drink. And so I kind of considered it like the Chantix for alcohol, like you were allowed to keep drinking, but you would just stop enjoying it and eventually just not do it anymore. And there's all these celebrities and stuff that claim to have gotten sober that way, and I tried that, and it totally failed. It was like I would take the pill, and yeah, I would not be enjoying my drinking. So but what's our instinct then? We drink more and more and more. So they call it, I would drink through it, or I would just not take the pill because I wanted to have fun. And, we just don't have the discipline for that. So that was another one of my half measures that availed me nothing. Um, and a couple of months later, our friend, well, it's actually my husband's good friend, passed away, I think, of alcoholism. And we had to go to his funeral. And then we also had tickets to a comedy show that evening. And so we got a babysitter for the night. My parents were going to have the kids. And the plan was that I was to drive to this funeral and to the comedy show, and then we could take an Uber home from that point. But I was going to be the DD. But oh, that damn bartender at the Mexican place, or, it's always everybody else's fault. We ended up having drinks, and there was an after party for the funeral. I was like, I vaguely remember double fisting there. It's like, what am I doing? By like 4 in the afternoon, I was blacked out, and I came to at my mother-in-law's house. I don't know why we had to stop there. And Josh said, we're not going to the comedy show. And I was like, why? And I was so mad at him. I said, just make me some coffee. We're fucking going. And he's like, no. And he drove us home. And I continued to fight with him and just grabbed my keys and took off. Grabbed a few $100s and proceeded to go on a mission to find drugs. I ended up in a very dangerous situation that night. I don't know that I want to tell it, but I'm lucky to be alive. I knew, Josh had told me that numerous times the year prior to that, one more and I'm not going to put up with it anymore, and my marriage was going to end. And so I knew that this was it. I knew that I could not moderate. I was supposed to be the designated driver that day, and I physically could not do it. And I knew at that point that one more drink could end up killing me or ruining my life. Um, and so I went to AA. It wasn't until about 7 days later that I went to my first meeting. And yeah, everything's been different ever since.
What was your first month like in AA, you know?
Well, I went in April of 2022, but my sober date is not till May 31st. So I went I went to a women's group on a Saturday, a
Um,
bunch of
what
lovely ladies.
was that your first meeting?
Yeah, that was my first ever. I knew
Okay.
nothing about AA.
Tell us about your
Yep.
first meeting.
I showed up at this church, was sitting in the parking lot, and saw all these nice ladies heading in the building, and I thought, oh no, church people, like where are the alcoholics? Where are all the derelicts like me? But they're now, and it turns out that they were heading to the AA meeting too, and I just couldn't believe it. And they were very welcoming. The lady who is now my sponsor was hanging up a little sign that said AA on it and walked me back to the room. And I just, finally felt understood because my whole life prior to that, like my family, I don't know if they're normal drinkers. I think they're heavy drinkers, but not a lot of them are alcoholic. And they would just tell me, like, just don't get so drunk, Laura, like just get a little bit drunk. Just pace yourself. Why do you have to do this? Everybody thought that it was just a lack of self-control on my part or disrespect, that I was intentionally ruining the night for everybody. That was my goal because I'm selfish bitch. And finally, I was surrounded by people who understood that I wasn't a bad person.
When you first started AA, coming in as an atheist, and you see the steps and the traditions on the wall, and you see the word God, like what was going through your head at that time? Or was your gift of desperation so great that you were just like, whatever, I have to do something?
Exactly. Yeah. I was so desperate at that point. I was like, I'll play along. Um, I wanted nothing to do with that, but I happened to know the Serenity Prayer from my grandma, like had it painted on the wall or something, so I played along. Um, but yeah, I was just so desperate. I was like, just tell me what to do. Like these women are happy and I am more miserable than I've ever been in my life. I think I even called like a suicide hotline after that rock bottom. Um, so I I also had two little kids though, and it was like Saturdays, and I figured that was the only time I could go to meetings while they were napping because I didn't want to burden my husband. I had already done that enough. Um, and then like I wasn't making it every Saturday because there would always be some excuse. And he wasn't being the most supportive, I would say, kind of was acting burdened by it. And so I kind of went like every other week. And then on Memorial Day, when I had 49 days, I relapsed. Uh, and I was kind of drinking at him because I felt like I was doing everything for the kids. I was still like totally involved in self. Everything was happening to me. I'll show him. And we had a barbecue at our house, and some in-laws were coming that I hadn't even met yet. They were like in town and stuff, and I completely blacked out. And and that was really embarrassing. But I called my sponsor the next morning, and she said, "Can you go to a meeting today?" And I said, and it was a Tuesday, and I had called in sick to work, and my kids were at my mom's house, and so I was like, "Yeah, I guess I can." And everybody had always told me you need to go to more than one meeting a week. And I would tell them, like, you're insane. I don't have time for that. I work and have two kids. Um, but after that relapse, I knew that I needed to do something differently. And my husband saw that, you know, we needed to take it more seriously. And so I started going to about 3 meetings a week at that point, and I've been sober ever since.
What is your relationship with your children? How's that evolved from being, they were quite small during your rock bottom, and then, you know, as they're getting older, you're more sober, you're, like more present in their life. Like, what does that look like?
Um, Yeah, I'm very lucky that they were so young that I hope they don't even remember it. Uh, my oldest, he said once that why was I sleeping on the kitchen floor? He asked me.
Oh, doesn't that just break
And
your heart? Like,
yeah,
yeah.
and it was like 5 p.m. and I like completely passed out on the kitchen floor once.
Mm-hmm.
So, in front of him. So, other than that, like I don't think they really knew. They knew what beer was and the kids couldn't have it and stuff, but my relationship with them is so wonderful now. Like I loved my kids as much as I possibly could at that point. But being so selfish as we are when we're in active alcoholism, I I didn't know what love was. Um, I I would like read them books every night, and I was constantly keeping up this persona. It was, you know, the perfect mom on paper. Everything was always in order and they ate healthy food, and I was killing myself to keep up the image of a good mom during my drinking and stuff, but really I wasn't being present with them. I never just like sat down with them, and like everything was just an obstacle to get me to my drink. I'm reading to them at like stories at night, and yeah, that's something a good mom does, but I'm just like, can we hurry this up? The bear is calling my name. um,
Yeah,
and
it's a
now like
means to an end, right? Like to get them to go to bed
yeah,
sooner so that you're not there enjoying them. It's just a mean that activity is a means to end so that you can get
yeah.
to your next drink. And I think like
And
thank you for being so vulnerable and honest about that because I really believe there's an extra layer of shame for women in that has, that's struggling with addiction. But women with small children have an added layer. And I think we're so scared, you know, to say anything about that or to be labeled a bad mom or uh, to not conform to society's idea of what a good mom looks like on Instagram, right? Like the house should be clean, you should be
yeah,
working, your kids should be put together, and you should be doing these Instagram worthy activities with
Yeah,
and meanwhile, like all you're thinking is like, I have to get to my next drink. I'm not okay. And it takes a lot of courage to be able to be that open and vulnerable. So thank you for that, because I think there's a lot of women out there that will identify with that, and that will really resonate with them and allow them to know like it's okay and they're not the first and they're not a horrible mom and there is help.
right. Yeah, definitely. I remember like I would unfollow people on Facebook when they posted like good pictures of being a good mom because it would just make me feel ashamed.
Yeah.
I was never happy for anybody else. I was either jealous of them or judging them because it was all about me.
Yeah, you're either keeping up or you're trying to like one up them, but
Yeah,
you're just so busy wrapped up in that game that you're meanwhile they're like tugging at your pants like, mommy, like try, just trying to make eye contact with you, but
yeah.
yeah.
What is life like today now? Now that you're sober, you have over a year, 16 months. What's the difference?
It it's great. Like it's chaotic having two young boys, but I have peace through all the chaos because I am not worried about that. Like people tell me that it must be hard to get sober when you have these two young kids kind of driving you crazy, and it's like, no, it's actually so much easier not having to, because dealing with my alcoholic self was like an additional kid to take care of for all of us. And it's just this huge weight that's been lifted. I don't have to, everything's always done and it's effortless almost. Life is so much easier and we're at peace and nobody's worried about me. And I truly enjoy being a mom now. Um, and yeah, I think we're all a lot happier.
So, if you would have been able to give yourself a piece of advice when you most needed it, what would that have been? What would it be?
I wish that I had known that sobriety doesn't suck because I always viewed sobriety as a punishment or a sentence for something you'd done wrong. Anybody who didn't drink, I assumed, had, you know, done something horrible and then had to go to AA and be miserable for the rest of their life and just white knuckle it while everyone around them was having so much fun. And I had no idea that I could find happiness in sobriety. So when we're the happiest we've ever been. So
And I always love asking this question because I think, AA always teaches us like a God to our own understanding. And so for myself, it's really evolved over the years that I've been in recovery. But what is your idea of God, or how has that evolved? It went from being an atheist to just kind of faking it and playing along for that desperation. And what is it like today?
today I still have not had any burning bush or giant spiritual experience, uh, but I know I'm not keeping myself sober because I know I couldn't do that. And I like the concept that I've heard before that God is not me. I don't need to control everything anymore, and it's so liberating. Giving thanks to God, and I do pray every day. I don't know if anyone's listening. I honestly don't, but I try, and I feel like just relinquishing control and finding spirituality and nature and music and everything. That's good enough for me at the time.
No, I think that's amazing. I mean, it's always a journey, right? Like we're always
Yeah,
evolving. Well, I would say for your first time telling your story and then being so open and honest and then doing it on the podcast too, like you're working a strong program. Keep going, girlfriend. You're doing great.
thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for checking out the show. Remember, you can help support the show at recoveryedgepodcast.com with a donation or Venmo us at Recovery Edge. We appreciate all your support in helping us grow the show. Please share the podcast with your friends through your favorite podcast app. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. We also have a new YouTube channel, which you can find in our show notes. Please give us a like or a review wherever you listen to the show. If you would like to share your own experience, strength, and hope on the show, contact us at recoveryedgepodcast.com and use the chat feature or contact link. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you next time.